I'm Marion Blake, 65 years old, and for 10 years I have been the quiet engine running my son's household. Every lunchbox packed, every fever soothed, every late-night lullaby, that was me. Last Sunday, over roast potatoes and a cake from the supermarket, they told me they were expecting baby number 5. I forced a smile as my heart sank. And then my son and his wife asked me to help pay their rent because, in their words, I was there half the week anyway. That was the moment everything in me shifted. I looked around the table at the children I had raised like my own. I loved them with all my heart, but I felt the weight of 10 years pressing down on my shoulders. My hands ached, my back throbbed, and my savings were nearly gone. I realized in that instant that if I didn't choose myself now, I never would. So I drew a line. I decided I would no longer be the family's unpaid nanny or their safety net. For the first time in years, I chose me. When my husband passed away, I thought the hardest chapter of my life was behind me. I pictured retirement as a season of quiet mornings, a little gardening, maybe traveling with my neighbor Ruthie to see the Smoky Mountains. But instead, I became the one holding my son Trevor's family together. He worked long days pouring concrete, and his wife Kelsey worked nights at the hospital. They were always tired, always stretched thin, and before I knew it, their 4 children were in my arms more often than in theirs. At first, I told myself it was temporary, just a few months to give them a head start. But months turned into years, and a rhythm settled in. I became the one who woke the kids for school, checked homework, and tucked them into bed. Their laughter filled my little house, their toys crowded the floor, and their needs became my schedule. I don't regret loving them, not for a second. Ava learned to read sitting on my lap. Mason built his first science project with me at the kitchen table. Theo and I planted marigolds out front one spring, and Lily never fell asleep without my lullabies. But somewhere along the way, my own life slipped away. My quilting group at church met without me. The walking club strolled the park without me, and the stack of novels on my nightstand gathered dust. My world had quietly narrowed to fit their needs. It was a Sunday afternoon when everything shifted. Trevor and Kelsey invited me over for dinner, something they rarely did. The table was set with more care than usual: roast potatoes steaming in a serving dish, green beans glistening with butter, and a cake waiting on the counter. I thought maybe this was their way of saying thank you, a small gesture to acknowledge the years I had given. The children were their usual lively selves. Ava, 14, tried to keep her brothers from knocking over the juice pitcher. Mason tapped his fork against his plate, impatient for dessert. Theo whispered jokes that made Lily giggle so hard she nearly tipped her chair. Amid the noise, I smiled, tired but proud. I had been there for every milestone: science fairs, spelling bees, playground scrapes, and bedtime tears. In so many ways, these kids felt like my own. Then Kelsey set her fork down and glanced at Trevor with that look only couples share, the one that says, "It's time." Trevor tapped his glass like he was making a toast. "Mom," he began, his eyes shining, "we've got big news. Baby number 5 is on the way." The children erupted in chatter. "A baby? When? Is it a boy or a girl?" Kelsey leaned back, her hand resting on her stomach, glowing with pride. Trevor beamed like he had won a prize. "And me?" My smile stayed fixed, but inside my heart sank. A 5th baby. Another round of diapers, bottles, endless nights. I had already given up my quilting nights, my walking group, even the small trips I once dreamed of. I wanted to clap with the children, but instead a knot tightened in my stomach, because I knew exactly what it meant. They would lean on me harder than ever. A few evenings later, Trevor asked me to stay after the kids went to bed. His tone was careful, almost rehearsed. Kelsey sat beside him at the kitchen table, arms folded, eyes steady. I knew something was coming, but I didn't expect what I heard next. "Mom," Trevor began, "with the new baby on the way, things are going to be harder. You're already here most of the time. The kids depend on you. Maybe it's time to make it official." I frowned. "Official?" Kelsey jumped in. "Yes, official. You could handle the school runs, the meals, the laundry. You're practically living here half the week already." And she paused before finishing, "It would help if you pitched in for rent and groceries. Just a few hundred a month." The room spun for a moment. My pension barely covered my own small house, my utilities, my medication. I had already been buying their children's shoes when they outgrew them, covering field trip costs, and slipping cereal boxes into my cart for their pantry. Now they wanted me to pay them too. I tried to keep my voice calm. "You know I live on a fixed income. I already help with the kids and cover things when I can." Kelsey's tone sharpened. You eat meals here. You use the space. It's only fair. That word cut deep. Fair. Was it fair that my hands were raw from dishes, my back sore from lifting, my savings drained by their needs? I pressed my lips together, the silence between us heavier than any chore. In that silence, I knew something had to change. The next morning began like every other. My phone buzzed before sunrise with a text from Ava. Grandma, can you come? Mom's running late again. I set down my half-finished coffee and drove across town. The kitchen was chaos when I arrived. Bowls of crusted cereal littered the counter, milk pooled on the floor where someone had spilled it, and Mason was digging through a laundry basket for clean socks. Theo tore through the fridge searching for something sweet, while little Lily clung to my leg in pajamas, hair wild. I dropped my bag and moved on autopilot, sandwiches packed, juice boxes filled, apples sliced. I ironed Mason's shirt while reminding Theo to brush his teeth. I braided Lily's hair and tied her shoes. By 8 o'clock, I had herded them all into the car and headed for school. The drive was noisy, Ava venting about a history project, Mason tapping his pencil on the window, Theo rattling off questions about baseball, Lily humming softly. I kept one hand on the wheel and the other wrapped around my travel mug, as if the coffee was the only thing holding me together. By the time I returned to the house, the laundry pile looked like a mountain. I sorted, washed, folded, matched socks, scrubbed dishes, vacuumed crumbs. The dishwasher ran twice before noon. My back ached, my hands stiffened, but I kept moving. When the sun set that evening, I had fed the children, overseen homework, soothed tantrums, and tucked them in. The house looked calm, but inside I felt spent, hollowed out by another day that belonged to everyone but me. That evening I drove back to my own small house. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw my neighbor, Ruthie, sitting on her porch swing with a glass of iced tea. She waved me over. You look like you've carried the whole town on your shoulders, she said, scooting to make room. I sank beside her, the cool evening air brushing my face, and then, as if a dam had broken, the words tumbled out. I told her about Trevor and Kelsey wanting another baby, about the chores that filled every hour of my days, and about the new demand for rent money. My voice cracked when I admitted how invisible I felt, like a housekeeper who worked for free. Ruthie listened without interrupting. When I finally stopped, she leaned back and shook her head. Marian, you raised your kids. You did your job. This isn't your job anymore. Her words landed like a bell in my chest. I had whispered them to myself before, but hearing them spoken out loud made them undeniable. A few days later, I drove to the public library. I told Trevor I had errands to run, but really, I just needed space to think. I found a computer in the corner and typed in senior apartments near me. Dozens of listings appeared. Most were too expensive, $1,100, $1,200 a month, far beyond what my pension allowed. But tucked between them were a few income-based options. If I budgeted carefully, maybe it was possible. I scribbled phone numbers and addresses into my notebook. The act of writing them down felt like planting a seed. Before leaving, I stopped by the bulletin board near the entrance. Flyers covered the cork, cashier at the grocery store, desk aide at the senior center, tutoring for kids after school. None promised much, but even a few $100 extra could tip the balance. On the drive home, I pictured myself unlocking the door to a space that was mine and mine alone. No lists waiting on the counter, no late-night crying I had to soothe, just peace. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, running numbers in my notebook. For the first time in years, instead of calculating how to stretch my savings for someone else, I was daring to imagine a life of my own. The following Friday, Kelsey casually mentioned they wanted a night out. You'll stay overnight, right? We'll be late, she said, as if it were a given. For years, I would have nodded, rearranged my plans, and packed an overnight bag. But this time I looked her in the eye. My voice was steady. No, Kelsey, I can't stay overnight anymore. I'll help in the afternoons, but I need my evenings back. The silence that followed was sharp. Her eyebrows lifted as if I'd slapped her. What do you mean you can't? She pressed. I shook my head. Not anymore. I need to take care of myself. That night, Ava lingered by the laundry basket while her siblings ran off. She fiddled with a folded shirt before asking in a whisper, Grandma, are you leaving us? The question pierced my heart. I pulled her into a hug. Oh honey, no, I'll always be here for you. But being here doesn't always mean living under the same roof. She sniffled, nodding slowly. I kissed her forehead. You'll never lose me, Ava. but I have to take care of myself too." Her arm squeezed me tight, as if she understood more than any grown-up ever had. The real breaking point came one evening when I arrived to pick up Ava from choir practice. As we pulled into the driveway, Trevor stood on the porch, arms crossed, face red. Kelsey hovered behind him, lips pressed thin. "Mom, we need to talk," Trevor said before I'd even stepped out of the car. Inside the kitchen, an envelope sat on the counter. Kelsey pointed to it like it was evidence in a trial. "We had $300 in here. It's gone. And it disappeared right after you started packing your suitcase." My stomach dropped. "You think I took your money?" Trevor's eyes narrowed. "You're the only one who's been around. If you needed help, you could have asked. But don't sneak it." Heat rushed to my face. "I would never steal from you. I've been the one buying groceries, shoes, school supplies for years. You know that." Kelsey's voice turned sharp. "Then explain where it went." Trevor added coldly, "Maybe we should call the police. Let them sort it out." Those words nearly broke me. My own son, threatening police after everything I had given. My throat closed. No words would come. Then, out of nowhere, Ava's voice cut through the tension. She stood in the doorway, pale but steady. "Grandma didn't take anything. She's the only one who ever gives us stuff. I saw Mom put that envelope in her purse last week after groceries. Don't say you forgot." The room went silent. Kelsey flushed but said nothing. Trevor shifted uncomfortably. Finally, I found my voice. "I don't deserve this. I've given everything I could. And now you accuse me of stealing." I picked up my purse and walked out. Ava's brave words echoed in my ears, but so did Trevor's threat. That was the night I knew I could never go back. Back at my little house, I pulled a suitcase from the closet and set it in the corner of my bedroom. For days, I didn't pack much, just a few things that mattered most. My quilting needles, a photo of my husband and me on our wedding day, and a small Bible that had belonged to my mother. These were pieces of my life that reminded me who I was before I became everybody else's caretaker. I didn't announce anything to Trevor or Kelsey. I wasn't interested in another argument, but even the quiet act of slipping a sweater into that suitcase felt like a declaration. This was my decision, and no one could take it from me. One evening, Kelsey showed up at my door, arms folded, eyes hard. "So it's true," she said flatly. "You're really planning to go?" I met her stare. "Yes, I need my own space." "You're choosing yourself over your family," she snapped. I wanted to tell her the truth, that regret was what I already lived with, regret for the years I had lost. But instead I kept my voice steady. "I'll always be their grandmother, but I won't be your maid." Her mouth tightened, and without another word she turned and walked away. I stood in the doorway, suitcase in view, finally certain of my next step. A week later, I signed the lease on a one-bedroom apartment at the edge of town. It wasn't much, just a small kitchen, a narrow living room, and a balcony big enough for 2 pots of flowers. But it was mine. For the first time in years, I turned a key in a lock that belonged only to me. I furnished it with thrift store finds, a second-hand table, 2 mismatched chairs, and a lamp with a wobbly shade. On that table I placed my husband's photo, and in the corner sat my quilting bag, waiting for my hands. At night, the quiet felt heavy at first, but slowly it began to feel like comfort. No shouts for help with homework. No mountains of laundry, just me, a cup of tea, and stillness. I found a part-time job at the senior center answering phones, and suddenly my days had rhythm again. During lunch breaks, I shared coffee with people my age who laughed at the same old jokes I did. On Thursday nights, I rejoined the quilting circle at church, the women clapping and hugging me like no time had passed. The guilt lingered, whispering that I had abandoned my family. But each morning when I watered the geraniums on my balcony, I knew I had chosen survival, not selfishness. One Tuesday afternoon, the phone rang. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. "Mom," Trevor's voice was tight, almost panicked. "It's Kelsey. She's in the hospital. Complications with the pregnancy. The doctor says bed rest weeks, maybe months. The kids are falling apart. I don't know what to do." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. After everything, the arguments, the accusations, the threat of calling the police, he was calling me again. A part of me wanted to hang up, to let him figure it out. But then I thought of Ava trying to keep order, Mason scrambling for clean clothes, Theo wandering for snacks, little Lily clinging to whoever would hold her. I took a deep breath. "I'll help, Trevor, but only on my terms." There was silence on the line. "What do you mean?" I'll be there after school, I'll cook simple meals, I'll keep the kids steady. But I'm not moving back in. I keep my apartment and this is only for 3 months. After that, you and Kelsey take back your responsibilities. I could almost hear his jaw clench. Finally, he muttered, fine. 3 months. The next day I drove over after my morning coffee. The house looked like a storm had passed through, books scattered, dishes piled high, shoes in the hallway. The kids rushed toward me, relief written on their faces. It's going to be all right, I told them, gathering them close. But listen, this has to be a team effort. Ava, you help Mason with homework. Mason, you take the trash out. Theo, you set the table. Lily, napkins are your job. They blinked at me, uncertain at first. But when they started moving, I saw something new in their eyes: responsibility, pride. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. Over the weeks that followed, I kept my promise. I helped, but I no longer carried every burden myself. Instead of doing all the chores, I began teaching the children to do them. One evening, Ava and I stood side by side at the stove. I cracked the first egg into a pan, then handed her the next one. Your turn, I said. She wrinkled her nose but tapped the shell carefully. When the eggs slid into the skillet, she laughed in surprise. By the time she flipped them onto a plate, her face glowed with pride. That wasn't so hard, she whispered. Mason grumbled the first time I showed him how to load the washer. Why do I have to? He asked. But when he pulled out a stack of clean shirts later and folded them himself, I caught the small smile he tried to hide. Theo's job was setting the table. He treated it like an art project, lining up forks and napkins in perfect rows. Lily, still small, learned to put her crayons back in a box instead of scattering them across the floor. It wasn't flawless. The eggs were sometimes runny, the laundry folded crooked, the dog fed twice in one day, and not at all the next. But the children were learning. They were stepping into responsibilities their parents had left vacant. And with each small success, I felt lighter. I wasn't just holding them up anymore. I was showing them how to stand tall on their own. By the time autumn rolled around, Kelsey delivered a baby boy, Jack, tiny but healthy. I visited the hospital once, mostly for the children's sake. Ava held her new brother with care, Mason peeked over her shoulder, Theo stood on tiptoe, and Lily beamed with wonder. I congratulated Trevor and Kelsey, kissed the baby's forehead, and quietly left. When Kelsey returned home, the chaos only grew. But this time I didn't step back into the old role. My 3 months were finished, and I kept my word. I still visited, still loved, still listened to late-night phone calls from Ava, but I no longer gave up my life to hold theirs together. I raised my son. It was never my job to raise his. Love is not surrender, it is balance.